Hello and welcome to the report of the fourth round of the BPB Limburg Open here in Maastricht. A round where we saw a very exciting game on the first board between the two players who still won all their games, Koen Leenaerts and Charlie Tang. And the game developed quite, well, calm in the beginning. At some point we reached the current position and Charlie here saw he could win a pawn. But I'm not sure if he underestimated White's composition. So he took the rook on d1, rook takes d1, he took the pawn on e3. Now White plays knight e5, threatening the bishop on g6 and the pawn on f7 as well. Black goes king f8, rook d8 check, king e7, rook c8. And here Charlie made I think quite a wise decision. He decided to go for counterplay, because White has multiple ideas here. You can go rook c7, attacking this pawn, of course the king, and also the f7 pawn twice. Not 3 times actually. Also the c5 pawn is under attack. So Black seems to be in some trouble, but I think the best way to face these problems is just to play active moves, which he did, bishop e4. Now White took the pawn on f7. And Black thought he could play a clever move. He played knight d5, attacking the knight on f7, because the bishop is not long protecting it. And I think, well, he quite liked the prospect of bishop takes d5, because the bishop against the knight, with pawns on 2 sides of the board. And Black also aiming at the b3 pawn, and maybe later on even the g2 pawn, with a very strong bishop on d5. It looks pretty good for Black here. But Koen did some good calculations. He played rook takes c5, and this is where it gets very, very interesting. And I have to apologize to Charlie, because during the commentary I thought that taking on f7 would just get Black into a, well, comfortable endgame. Bishop takes d5, bishop takes d5, rook takes d5, rook takes b3, and you're never going to lose this with Black. So I thought he missed a very good opportunity to get a comfortable ending here. But I made a huge mistake, because after king takes f7 here, White goes king f2, and suddenly the Black rook is in big trouble. The knight is still protecting it, but the knight is pinned and under attack. And the rook has no squares. If you go to c3, which is your only square, then bishop takes d5 with check, and you just drop your rook. So where I thought king takes f7 was very good, it's actually losing the game. So he thought for a long time. He decided to play knight takes f4, which is actually the best move, but it's still not easy to find why exactly. And once again, this is extremely interesting stuff. So I'm going to go through it quickly, but if you want to, grab a chessboard and check it yourself, I can really advise you to do that, because it's really interesting. So White goes king f2, still the same idea. The rook on e3 is sort of trapped, and you can't really move your rook anywhere. If you go rook c3, there's no discovered check, but you have different problems as the rook e5 check, simply winning the bishop on e4. So he decided to go knight d3 check, also knight g2. Looks a bit scary, because the formation of these pieces is very, very shaky and very vulnerable to all kinds of tricks. So, but he played the right move. He played knight d3, which is the best move. Now king takes e3, knight takes c5, and here it seems White is simply winning a piece after b4, which is what Koen also played in the game, because the knight has to move, and you can just grab the bishop on e4 on the next move. Now Charlie took on g2, White takes on c5, he took on h3, but the endgame was just lost, and White can stop the g and h pawn and can create a pass pawn himself. But the interesting part actually is, after b4, he could have played this very clever move, bishop d3. And this move is just amazing. Attacking the bishop on c4. Now if White decides to grab the bishop, then obviously knight takes d3. And we'll end up in a drawn endgame. At least Black's not losing a piece. And if you play bishop a2, now Black has the beautiful move. It's simply stunning. Knight a6. It looks so weird, but the idea is simple. If White takes the bishop on d3, then knight takes b4 check. You get the bishop on a2, and you're even up a pawn. So that's just good for black all of a sudden. And if white decides to put the bishop on d5 instead, you still play knight a6, because king d3, once again knight takes b4. You grab the bishop, then grab the knight on the next move. And the bishop has no other squares on this diagonal. So bishop d3 is a wonderful move to save the game here. Difficult to find, but very beautiful when you see it. Now, what could white have done differently? White maybe should have played king d4 in this position, attacking the knight. And now it's not so easy what to play with black. For example, knight e6 doesn't work because you can take the bishop. If you take the knight, simply king e5, winning the knight. So after king d4, black can go b6, but now b4 is quite strong, simply because knight a6 is not possible anymore. So then black once again have to go for the move he played in the game, which is bishop takes g2, pawn takes c5, pawn takes e5, king takes, and bishop takes pawn. And now the big difference for black is he got rid of one pair of pawns, the pawn on b7 against the pawn on c5. And black is obviously aiming to get rid of as many pawns as possible, because that raises his drawing chances. And this is probably holdable for black, even though it's going to be very difficult still to find the best moves in the game. So very interesting position, but the game position looked like this. And with these extra pawns on the board, Koen managed to win the endgame quite easily. So Koen is the only leader with 4 out of 4. But let's see what happened on the other boards. Most of the top players faced some weaker opponents. So did Matthew Sadler playing against Mike Caveman. And the game was quite even actually up to a certain point. Sadler playing black here, and well, he's just a bit passive. White's pieces are nicely coordinated, the rook's on the open files. And it looks all pretty good. But this is the point where Mike played one passive move, and suddenly Sadler just strikes immediately. She played knight b3, probably hoping to exchange a few pieces and get into some drawish endgame. But black played knight a4, attacking the b2 pawn, and this one is quite annoying to defend. So Mike had to play rook b1, and here Sadler had a very nice move. He played queen a8, not only attacking the g2 pawn, but also threatening bishop e4 to eliminate the rook on b1 and try to win the b2 pawn. So probably white should have played bishop f1, which is covering g2 and preventing bishop e4. But instead she played queen to g3, and now bishop e4, she only had one move if she didn't want to lose a pawn, which is bishop to f3. Well, Sadler took, and well, the next moves were quite logical. Rook e3, rook d8, doubling up, and white is still in trouble because the b2 pawn, you can't just leave it alone, so the knight is just holding the b1 rook on its place. So a few more moves were played, rook d5, and black is trying to make use of the weak pawns in the white position. King f3 was a bit too much, and the rook is check, rook d1, and all of a sudden you're losing the b pawn. Because rook e1, black takes, and grabs the pawn on b2. So white tried to defend for quite a few more moves, but in the end Sadler managed to convert this extra pawn and won the game, getting himself on 3.5 out of 4 and still plenty to play for, of course. One more interesting game we found between Roland Pruijssers and Lars Stark, the German player, and let's jump straight to the position where it all happened. So Roland decided to sacrifice a pawn in the opening, and the reason is pretty obvious, because he managed to keep these pieces undeveloped. And undeveloped pieces is always dangerous, so Roland decided to go for the attack, and he made a nice sacrifice here. He played bishop takes h6, very good move, making use of black's lack of development and just going straight for the black king. Now if you take the bishop, white plays rook e3, and there's an annoying double threat, not only rook g3 check, where black is going to lose the f8 rook because the king has to move, but also the idea of going queen takes h6, followed by rook g3 with checkmate, and you simply can't stop both. So he can't take the pawn on h6, sorry, he can't take the bishop on h6, so that's why he played rook e8. And yeah, there are many ways to get a very comfortable position, but Roland finished it quite nicely. Rook e3, queen f6, black decided to exchange the queens to hold back the attack So he takes f4, very nice move. Black keeps it closed, e4, f5 now. Rook a5, try to bring an extra defender and maybe win the f-pawn and hopefully save his king. But it's too late already. Rook g3 check, king h7, rook f4, going for the h file of course, rook g8. Now he played bishop takes f7, rook takes g3, and a beautiful final move, bishop f8. And the next move, rook h4 with checkmate, is simply unstoppable for black. He can't run, the two bishops are way too strong, and black had to resign this position. Still with its pieces on b8 and c8, which probably hurts a little bit. So in the meantime, they already started the 5th round, and the top players are playing each other again this round. So from this point on, the tournament is really gonna. It's time for the people who want to win the tournament to show themselves now. You can't really hide anymore. So I'm really looking forward to all the fireworks we're expecting. So far the report of the 4th round of the BPB Limburg Open, and I want to thank you all for watching.